Would you be the jerk for getting upset when your sister-in-law gave your newborn kid a gift? We'll get to that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for not defending my boyfriend when my brother asked him to leave? My 28-year-old female boyfriend, 27-year-old male, Ryan, likes to help others. He's the type of guy who would give a coworker money for their rent or buy groceries for our neighbor. However, he can take it too far at times. He often tries to help people without asking if they need or want his help. Every year, my brother, 35-year-old male, Paul, and his wife, 33-year-old female, Lily, host a holiday dinner. This year, Ryan attended for the first time. Before we left for their house, I told Ryan that Lily was legally blind and had been her entire life. She knew what she could and could not do. I told Ryan to only help Lily if she asked for help. We arrived early so I could help Paul and Lily cook. While we were cooking, Ryan kept telling Lily things like, "Lily, if you're looking for the salt, it's to your right." Or, "Lily, don't put that there, it's too close to the edge." Lily and Paul told him that while his commentary was somewhat helpful, it was completely unnecessary. Still, Ryan did not stop. However, things became tense when Lily went to go chop vegetables. When she pulled out a knife, Ryan stopped her and asked if he could take over because he didn't want Lily to hurt herself. Lily said she'd be fine, but Ryan insisted she give him the knife. Finally, Paul got annoyed and told Ryan to stop. Ryan did stop, but he kept hovering over Lily while she was chopping. I asked Ryan to sit down until dinner was ready, but Ryan insisted that he just wanted to help. Finally, Lily asked him and I to help set the table and greet people arriving. We did, but things were still tense. I did pull Ryan to the side and reminded him again to only help Lily if she asked for it. He agreed, but I could tell that he was still upset. Everything finally boiled over after dinner. My nieces, 5 and 3, have a game they love to play with their mother. They'll hand Lily something, and Lily would have to guess what it is. Lily would sometimes make a couple of clearly outrageous guesses, like saying an egg is an elephant or a shoe, to make her daughters laugh. After dinner, the eldest handed Lily the salt shaker. When Lily guessed it was a phone, Ryan piped up and said it was a salt shaker. Lily laughed it off and explained the game to Ryan, but I could see she was annoyed. My niece then handed Lily a coin. When Lily guessed incorrectly, Ryan loudly told Lily it was a coin. This was apparently the last straw for Paul. Paul demanded that Ryan leave since he clearly couldn't respect Lily. Ryan insisted that he was trying to be helpful. However, Lily said it was probably best if Ryan and I left. I quickly gathered up our things and managed to convince Ryan to leave. Ryan's currently pissed at me. He said I should have defended him, especially since I knew he was only being helpful. He also insisted that I should have stood up against Paul's overreaction. Ryan's words. I'm now wondering if I should have defended Ryan. Am I the jerk? I don't understand why this guy refuses to mesh with how things are, but they really just don't get it. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving dinner early and causing a scene in front of my wife's family? Let me preface this by saying that I, male 35, love my wife, female 40. I just think she can be a bit inconsiderate at times. My son, 15-year-old male, has what my wife calls a deadpan voice. While I admit he doesn't show much enthusiasm when speaking, I think he has a right to express himself in his own way. My wife, however, insists that he needs to be more enthusiastic and vocal. She often tells him to speak up or say it with feeling, and I can tell that it gets to him. My wife recently started taking a different approach, which I can tell really bothers him. When addressing him, she talks in the most enthusiastic voice she can muster. She'll even go as far as to clap her hands and make facial expressions as she talks to him. How was school today? Tell me all about it. Speak loudly and with enthusiasm. Think kindergarten teacher talking to her students. My son just looks at her like she's crazy and I can tell he's embarrassed. I've tried to privately talk to my wife about this, but she doesn't seem to get it. She insists that her way is the right way and that our son needs to learn how to be more outgoing. So fast forward to yesterday, we were celebrating Christmas at my sister-in-law's house, and my son asked me to pass the gravy. My wife, in her usual enthusiastic voice, started saying, "Say it with feeling, honey. Can you ask for the gravy with enthusiasm?" I snapped. It's one thing to do this when it's just the two of us, but doing this in front of our family was too much. I got up, took my son, and took him to the movies, leaving my wife with the other family members. After we got back, my wife pulled me aside and absolutely ripped into me for causing a scene. She said that I was embarrassing her and that I was out of line. I told her that I was tired of her trying to fix our son's personality and that I felt this was a good opportunity to make a point. My wife's family hasn't said anything to me, but I've been getting a lot of judgmental looks from them. I just wanted to stick up for my son, but did I go too far? Am I the jerk? This next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting coal for Christmas? This year, I went to my fiance's house for Christmas. It was my first time going, as we would typically go to my family's house instead. I got a rather pricey gift for my fiance, Dan, related to his hobbies. I got nice gifts for Dan's parents based off of things I talked about with them before, and I got a small pack of chocolates for each of Dan's other relatives. I didn't know them that well. I wasn't expecting many gifts from Dan's relatives because I didn't know many of them that well, but I was certainly expecting more than I got. At first, I was excited when I saw there was a big pile of gifts for me. However, once I opened the first one, and it was just a piece of coal, everyone laughed. And I just kind of laughed along, thinking it was a gag gift and that the other gifts would be different. But every single one turned out to be coal. All 18 of them. I started to get upset, so I cried and lashed out at Dan, but he calmly explained apparently that this was a long-standing tradition in his family where they gift coal to newcomers who are celebrating Christmas with them for the first time. He explained that it's just easier that way, since all the relatives who might not know the newcomer well don't have to stress over finding a gift. And it's a fun experience for the newcomer as well. I told Dan I couldn't believe I skipped my own family's celebration for this and left. But now Dan and some of his family are blowing up my phone saying I embarrassed him in front of his relatives and that I made it awkward for everyone. So, am I the jerk? I don't think you're the jerk. If I went to a Christmas party and then I got 18 things of coal, it might be funny, but let's be real, you're kind of hoping for some presents. Our next story is, am I the jerk for selling the Nintendo Switch my aunt got me for Christmas? Let me preface this by saying that this is a throwaway account because I'm sure family will recognize me. So here's the situation. I, male 17, recently got a Nintendo Switch for Christmas from my aunt. I was over the moon when I opened it. I've been wanting one for a while, but I couldn't afford it. So fast forward the next day, my aunt hands me a note. I read it and it's a list of rules and regulations that she wants me to follow while playing the Switch. According to her rules, I have to give her daughter, who's also visiting, a certain amount of playtime each day whenever she's around. I have to keep the volume at a certain level. I can't play any games with violence or adult themes, which is basically just anything rated above E10+. And I'm not allowed to let anyone else play it without her permission. There was also one other rule. I had to enable parental controls so she could monitor my activity. To give you some context, I see this aunt maybe twice a year. I understand that she's just trying to look out for me and make sure that I'm not playing inappropriate games, but I felt like she was treating me like a child and that her rules were a bit ridiculous. So I decided to sell the Switch online at a steep discount and use the money to buy a new one without any strings attached. My aunt found out and got pissed, saying I was ungrateful and that I should have thought about her feelings before I decided to do something so selfish. My parents are also mad at me and say I should have just talked to her about it first. Did I do something wrong here? Am I the jerk? Our next story is, am I the jerk for getting up from my chair in the middle of Christmas dinner and shouting, "Shut the freak up about my body," in response to my husband's observation? So, ever since I had my son months ago, my husband started making indirect comments about my body. He never says any hurtful words, but I find his observations, as he calls it, hurtful. For example, he would see me wearing an old top and say, "Oh, that top used to look good on you, but not anymore though." Or when he looks at my waist and says, "Wow, didn't know your waist could get this wide." Basically passive stuff that I tried to ignore till it extended to friends and family. For your information, this went on for months and months and months. We went to Christmas celebration at his family's home. My sister-in-law complimented my floral maxi dress, and my husband said, "I agree, it looks nice on you. Though I have to admit that your waist could get smaller than this." Awkward silence took over. I was absolutely fuming and this was my last straw. So I got up from my chair in the middle of dinner and shouted at the top of my lungs, "Shut the freak up about my body." He was absolutely speechless as his family stared while some others tried to get me to calm down. But the situation got more tense and dinner ended up being cut short, and my husband storming off to his friend's place to spend the night upon leaving a very nasty text saying I embarrassed him and made a scene over an observation he made. He called me childish and told me to get therapy for my insecurities instead of verbally abusing him and scaring his family. Now I feel like an absolute idiot jerk and like I ruined Christmas for him and everybody with my oversensitivity. Am I the jerk? I think this would wear away at just about anyone, and I don't think it's an insecurity. This next story is, am I the jerk for getting my fiance's family gifts that were too personal for Christmas when I'm new to them? I'm engaged to Noah, and this was the first Christmas I spent with his family. I met them in the summer after we moved to be near his family now that he's finished with college. We're getting married in February, and we're expecting our first child together in May. Being someone who has no family and seeing how close his family was, I wanted to make sure I showed my appreciation for them with the gifts I gave. So I tried to get something each person would love. One of his sisters loves to read, and so I made a book sleeve for her with little details from all her favorite books. One of his nieces is on the spectrum and has wanted clothes for her stuffy, so I made some clothes for her to put on the stuffy. I bought his mom a jewelry box that she'd admired a couple of times after she mentioned never having a real one. For his dad, I bought him a frame for his office, big enough to hold photos of his whole family on, since he always complained he couldn't find one big enough or nice enough, and had no more room for individual frames. I included photos Noah had provided me in it. I got his other sister her favorite makeup, which she mentioned she couldn't afford to buy lately. Then I got his brother a signed piece of memorabilia from his favorite sports team. For the rest of the nieces and nephews, I bought wishlist items the parents weren't getting. Noah thought that they would love everything. He told me I didn't need to go to the effort I did. I spent weeks tracking everything down and searching for certain items, but he really thought they'd like them. But when Christmas Day happened, I could tell something was off. I spent the whole time worrying that I'd bought them stuff that they didn't like anymore or something. They said nothing. But then, the next day, they asked Noah what the heck I was thinking, and I was like some kind of stalker buying them such personal stuff when I'm almost a stranger to them. The next day, we saw them again, and I apologized for the gifts I gave them and told them I'd be a lot more mindful in the future. I offered to make it up to them. One of his sisters called me a stalker to my face and told me it was no wonder my family didn't want me if I was so creepy to do stuff like that. Noah yelled at her. I apologized again and told them I didn't want to hurt anyone and I would learn from this. They told me I had overstepped. Noah said we were leaving and they owed me an apology. I feel so bad. Noah supporting me and told me I did nothing wrong, but surely there wouldn't be so much offense if that were true. I need to ask, am I the jerk? Also, not sure if this is relevant or not, but I grew up in an unhappy home. My parents were unkind to me and my sister. She was much older and also hated me. I think maybe because of how our parents treated her, but I ended up with nobody who wanted me by the time I was 16, and I was homeless for a good period after that. That's what Noah's sister meant. I told them honestly when they asked. I don't think OP's the jerk. Somebody might feel a little too uncomfortable with how they got some information, but it was all out of love, you could tell. This next story is, am I the jerk for not appealing to the school to get my daughter in a higher education program? So my daughter, 14, is in 8th grade, and the whole school is by the public high school. There's a program that allows 8th graders to go experience the basics of chemistry, biology, med, and engineering classes. The kids would go over to the high school in the morning for a class and miss their elective of the day, so like art class or gym class. It's a pretty good program, but it's only for the top students in middle school, basically the best of the best. They also do it for students who are great at literature or arts, but my daughter falls into the science one. My oldest kids before her both did it, but my middle child didn't get in. So my daughter gets in trouble a lot. Sometimes it's for small things for not having her stuff for class, but other times it's for more important things. Just this year, she picked the lock to an art classroom to get some coloring tools. I'm talking to a principal at least once or twice a year, not to mention how many times she comes home with a pink slip. It's like a warning. She's the class clown and really bright. No punishment that I've tried made it stop. So today, we got the letters of who will be getting into the program. It'll start next week until she graduates. If you don't get in, the letter always tells you why. Usually it's your grades. Well, we opened it today and it basically said she had the grades to do it, but due to her discipline record, they will not accept her into the program. She was very upset and asked me to try to appeal it. There's a process for the school, but I told her no, that this is the consequence of her actions and that I've warned her they will catch up. She called me a jerk, and my husband's also not happy about what I said. I think honestly OP's not the jerk. I think this is a very valuable learning experience. Our next story is, am I the jerk for planning on celebrating my son's birthday on Veterans Day instead of my husband's service? My husband H, 32-year-old male, and I, 29-year-old female, have been married for 3 years. He's a veteran of the U.S. Army and values his military service as a very important part of himself and his history. He served for 8 years before he was honorably discharged. I gave birth to our son M nearly 2 months ago on November 11th. It's a long way away from his next birthday, but we've still been discussing the logistics of how we're going to handle future holidays now that we have a baby. My husband is very particular about those kinds of things, and he really likes having an idea of how things will go a long time in advance. It finally came up that he'd been born on Veterans Day, which my husband obviously knew, but I don't know if it sank in at the time. I told him that I intended to celebrate our son's birthday on November 11th, and we could have our Veterans Day dinner the day after. My husband was angry and said that it's unreasonable to move a whole holiday when the whole US is celebrating on that day, and that we should celebrate M's birthday the day prior or the next day. We still haven't come to an agreement. He thinks I'm a jerk for disrespecting his military service when the baby won't know his birthday is being celebrated a day later. But I think our son's birthday is much more important. Am I the jerk? This next story is, am I the jerk for not allowing my daughter to dress casually at my wedding? My 34-year-old female, daughter, 12-year-old female, has been acting uncooperative in the context of the planning process for my wedding. I've been engaged for almost 6 months and the wedding is happening in 8, so this was the moment to start the selection of the bridesmaid dresses. My daughter said she doesn't want to wear a dress like that. I was fine with that. I feel that having a junior bridesmaid is not really a necessity anyway, so she could still be a part of my day from a more flexible role, but then she said she didn't want to wear any kind of dress. I still thought that was valid. Maybe she could have worn a suit or something else. The issue was that she ended up saying she wouldn't wear anything expensive or formal to the wedding because she feels that kind of clothing doesn't represent her individuality, not just from a gender perspective, but also from a cultural and social point of view. She says she will only accept coming if she can wear the following outfit: a Manchester City shirt, a long black pleated skirt, and black leather sandals with 3-centimeter heels. I told her it would be better if she didn't come then, but she says if she isn't at the wedding, she won't recognize our marriage and still consider me to be single. We've been arguing about this a lot, but she doesn't change her mind. My fiancé, 41-year-old male, feels we should let her come to the wedding dress in any way she wants and that it's not a big deal. I feel she's acting crazy and we shouldn't reward her for it. Am I the jerk? This feels like a very interpersonal thing. I'm really not sure which way to lean. This next story is, am I the jerk for saying good job to my son after he scribbled on my husband's home office walls? I've been painting a mural for my unborn baby's nursery, and my son, 3-year-old male, has been watching and helping me do it. He knows it's a gift for his little brother, and he wanted to do the same for his dad, so he went into his home office and scribbled all over the walls, while my mother-in-law was watching him. When we saw what he had done, our son was really excited, but I think my husband was in shock because he was just looking at the scribbles without saying anything. I told my son good job and that it looked really pretty, but he needed to use paper next time instead after he said he made a present for his dad. My husband never said anything in front of our son, but when we were alone, he was upset that I said good job to him because he doesn't think I should be praising him for vandalizing his office. I told him he just wanted to do something nice for him and we could have the office repainted, or I could turn it into a mural if he wanted me to, but he's still upset at me for encouraging his behavior, and he keeps locking his office so our son can't go inside again. Am I the jerk? I just think it's a risky thing to encourage a kid to draw on walls regardless. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my cousin how his wife really felt about their cheap wedding? I'm 24-year-old female. My sister, 30-year-old female, is getting married. Her and her fiancé are going all out, no expenses spared, just like she always said she would. It's going to be an extravagant affair with hundreds of guests, and she's thrilled planning it. Our antisocial cousin, 31-year-old male, makes pretty good money as a software engineer, but he has no social awareness and is extremely cheap. He would literally sleep on a dirty mattress on the floor with nothing in his house but a TV and a console if his wife let him. That's what he was doing before they met. He thinks dressing presentably and having a decent home is materialistic. Now, my sister and I happily identify as materialistic, but he means it negatively when he says it. Since my sister started planning her wedding and gushing about it to me and some other people, not him, he always butts in with some smarmy remark about how weddings are stupid, what kind of stupid woman would spend tens of thousands on a wedding, and brags about how he married his wife last year in their backyard and her ring was $200 from a strip mall, and she was ecstatic. Today, my sister was gushing to me and my mom and some female cousins about her bachelorette party. My cousin came in and interrupted to brag that his wife never had a bachelorette party and would never want one because they're a waste of money, and she's so much more practical and less materialistic than most women. I decided to let him know how his wife really feels since she complains to us all the time about him and his cheap habits. I told him what actually happened on their wedding day. Hours before the ceremony, when my sister and I and our cousins were helping his bride get ready at their house, she went in the backyard and saw their cheap, checkered, white and red plastic barbecue tables and burst into tears. She was sobbing about how deeply ashamed she felt that her friends and family from college were going to see their cheapskate $700 wedding and see her walk through her own backyard in a $90 dollar store dress like a middle schooler at prom. She said that she thought her wedding would be special, and if she knew it would be this way, she would have eloped rather than feel humiliated in front of everyone she knew. They had to redo her makeup after she was crying, so she's just as materialistic as normal people are. Why does he think she told people not to take pictures on their wedding day? He was livid, ranting that he spent $700 giving her a nice wedding, and he's not going to waste his money on something so stupid. So how dare I say that about his now wife? He said, "No one cares about weddings and materialistic parties." He's like a child with having no concept of money or taste. I informed him the average cost of a wedding is $34,000. He humiliated his wife, and their wedding was the type catty people will gossip about for years. He was so mad, he drove home through the snow. If it's bad enough to upset the wife, and it's cheap, I mean, it is what it is, no matter how much he wants to try to defend it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for throwing my childhood in her face? So background, I, 28-year-old male, have a little sister, 13-year-old female, Josie. I'm sure some of you have a similar scenario with siblings and can relate to the fact that Josie and I have had very different upbringings. I don't think I had a bad childhood, and I know my parents did their absolute best by me. Just the facts are that when Josie was born, they were more mature and prepared, meaning they've been able to provide her with more stability and opportunities than they could have when I was a child. I am absolutely not jealous about this. If anything, I'm happy for Josie that she's getting such a good childhood. Now, the issue, our parents both have quite demanding careers, meaning long hours, so Josie spends a lot of time hanging out with my husband and I at our place. My husband and I are both IT guys in our 20s, and we absolutely live like it. Pertinent here is the way we eat. We don't live off of junk food by any means, but neither of us are gonna say no to pizza, and if we get sent home from any kind of function with leftovers, we're eating leftovers for the next few days, which is exactly the issue. My folks have been back at work after Christmas, so Josie's been at ours a lot. We spent Christmas Day with husband's family this year, and his ma'am sent us home with a frankly boggling amount of leftovers, so that's mostly what we've been eating this week. This includes Josie, who has made absolutely zero complaint on her own part and has in fact seemed pretty happy about it, since mother-in-law is a great cook and the kid just loves turkey. However, when my mom caught wind, she kind of flipped about it. For some reason, one of her big things the past 10 years has been a bit of an anti-leftovers crusade. and she believes that everyone should just eat freshly prepared food every day. Something about depleting nutrients the longer it sits. She got quite mad at the fact that husband and I have been feeding Josie with leftovers and had a bit of a rant about how we're depriving her of proper nutrition. I said we ate leftovers all the time when I was a kid, and I turned out fine. She really went off on me about how I'm so bitter and twisted that Josie's had more stability than me, and it's unfair of me to throw my childhood back in her face and to take it out on Josie as well. She ended up crying and hanging up her phone. I'm honestly mostly confused. Mom keeps texting me that she's sorry she was such an awful mother to me in a way that feels quite passive-aggressive. And Dad called me an ungrateful jerk for saying that to her. Josie doesn't seem to want to pick sides, but the Rents have been sending her out to our aunt instead of my house when they work. So there's that. From an outside standpoint, does it sound like I was the jerk here? If I was, I'll apologize because I didn't mean to be, but I want confirmation if I messed up or not first. I don't think OP was throwing anything in anybody's faces, and I think the parents might feel a little insecure. This next story is, am I the jerk for getting upset when my sister-in-law gave my newborn nephew a gag gift? I just had a baby a few weeks ago, and my sister-in-law came to visit. She brought a gift for the baby, which I thought was really nice. However, when I opened the gift, it was a book called The Baby Owner's Manual with a bunch of jokes and sarcastic comments about parenting. I was really offended and upset by this because I take my role as a parent very seriously, and I don't appreciate being made fun of. When I confronted her about it, she just laughed and said it was a joke and I shouldn't take it so seriously. I told her that I didn't find it funny and that I didn't appreciate her giving my newborn nephew a gag gift. My husband and brother sided with her and said I was overreacting. Am I the jerk for getting upset about this? I think OP's taking this way too personally. Would you guys agree with me on that? Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to spend New Year's Eve with my husband's kids? Here's the situation. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. We both have demanding jobs and are usually pretty busy, so we try to make the most of our time together when we're not working. This year, my husband's ex-wife asked if we could have the kids for Christmas. We agreed, thinking it would be a nice way to spend the holiday and give the kids a chance to spend time with their dad and for them to warm up to me. I'm a guy, and his ex-wife has only recently warmed up to him dating me, so this is progress. Well, Christmas was a bit of a mixed bag. The kids were grateful and seemed to enjoy spending time with us, but they also fought a lot and made a mess of my office. It was really stressful trying to keep them from arguing, and they seemed to be constantly bickering with each other over who got what toy and who's eating what food. Now, my husband's ex-wife has asked if we can have the kids again for New Year's Eve. My husband wants to say yes, but I'm really not interested. I feel like we've already put in a lot of effort for Christmas, and I don't want to spend another holiday with the kids, especially if it's going to involve a lot of fighting and stress. I've tried explaining this to my husband, but he just says that it's not fair to the kids and that we should be more understanding. He also thinks because the kids have been so accepting of me, we should have them around for New Year's Eve as well. I feel like I'm being selfish, but I also don't want to spend another holiday with the kids if it's going to be as stressful as Christmas was. Am I the jerk for not wanting to spend New Year's Eve with my husband's kids? If it's your husband's kids, I think you need to put in an effort to spend some time with them. Unless they are literally like attacking you. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.